The prologue of the Reeve's Tale. When folk had laughed their fill at this nice pass of Absalom and clever Nicholas, then divers folk diversely had their say, and most of them were well amused and gay. Nor at this tale did I see one man grieve, save it were only old Oswald the Reeve. Because he was a carpenter by craft, a little anger in his heart was left, and he began to grouse and blame a bit. So help me, said he, full well could I be quit, with blearingly of a haughty miller's eye, if I but chose to speak of ribaldry. But I am old, I will not play for age. Grass time is done, my fodder is rummage. This white top advertises my old years. My heart, too, is as mouldy as my hairs, unless I fare like meddler all perverse, for that fruit's never ripe until it's worse, and falls among the refuse, or in straw. We ancient men, I fear, obey this law. Until we're rotten we cannot be ripe. We dance indeed, the while the world we pipe. Desire sticks in our nature like a nail, to have a hoary head, a verdant tail. As has the leek, for though our strength be gone, our wish is yet for folly till life's done. For when we may not act, then will we speak, yet in our ashes is there fire to wreak. 4 embers have we, which I shall confess, boasting and lying, anger, covetousness. These 4 remaining sparks belong to eld. Our ancient limbs may well be hard to wield, but lust will never fail us, that is truth, and yet I have had always a colt's tooth. As many years as now are past and done, since first my tap of life began to run. For certainly when I was born I know, death turned my tap of life and let it flow, and ever since that day the tap has run, till nearly empty now is all the tun. The stream of life now drips upon the chime, the stilly tongue may well ring out the time of wretchedness that passed so long before. For oldsters, save for dotage, there is no more. Now when our host had heard this sermoning, then did he speak as lordly as a king. He said, to what amounts now all this wit? Why should we talk all day of holy writ? The devil makes a steward for to preach, and of a cobbler, sailor, or leech. Tell forth your tale, and do not waste the time. Here's Deptford, and it is half-way to prime. There's Greenwich town, that many a scoundrel's in. It is high time your story should begin. Now, sirs, then said this Oswald, called the Reeve, I pray you all now that you will not grieve, though I reply and somewhat twitch his cap. It's lawful to meet force with force, mayhap. This drunken miller has related here how was beguiled and fooled a carpenter, perchance in scorn of me, for I am one. So by your leave, I'll him requite anon. All in his own boor's language will I speak. I only pray to God his neck may break, for in my eye he well can see the mote, but sees not in his own the beam, you'll note. The Reeve's Tale. At Trumpington, not far from Cambridge town, there is a bridge wherethrough a brook runs down, upon the side of which brook stands a mill, and this is very truth that now I tell. A miller dwelt there many and many a day. As any peacock he was proud and gay. He could mend nets, and he could fish and flute, drink and turn cups, and wrestle well and shoot. And in his leathern belt he did parade a cutlass with a long and trenchant blade. A pretty dagger had he in his pouch. There was no man who durst this man to touch. A Sheffield whittler born he in his hose. Round was his face, and turned up was his nose. As bald as any ape's head was his skull. He was a market swaggerer to the full. There durst no man a hand on him to lay, because he swore he'd make the beggar pay. A thief he was, forsooth, of corn and meal, and sly at that, accustomed well to steal. His name was known as Arrogant Simpkin. A wife he had, who came of gentle kin. The parson of the town her father was. With her he gave full many a pan of brass, to ensure that Simpkin with his blood ally. She had been bred up in a nunnery, for Simpkin would not have a wife, he said, save she were educated and a maid to keep up his estate of yeomanry. And she was proud and bold as is a pie. A handsome sight it was to see those two. On holy days before her he would go, with a broad tippet bound about his head, and she came after in a skirt of red. While Simpkin's hose were dyed to match that same, there durst no man to call her aught but dame. Nor was there one so hardy in the way as durst flirt with her or attempt to play, unless he would be slain by this Simpkin, with cutlass or with knife or with bodkin. For jealous folk are dangerous, you know. At least they'd have their wives to think them so. Besides, because she was a dirty bitch, she was as high as water in a ditch, and full of scorn and full of backbiting. She thought a lady should be quite willing to greet her for her kin and culture, she having been brought up in that nunnery. A daughter had they got between the two, of 20 years, and no more children no, save a boy baby that was 6 months old. It lay in cradle and was strong and bold. This girl right stout and well developed was, with nose tip tilted and eyes blue as glass, with buttocks broad and round breasts full and high. But golden was her hair, I will not lie. The parson of the town, since she was fair, was purposeful to make of her his heir, both of his chattels and of his estate, but all this hinged upon a proper mate. He was resolved that he'd bestow her high into some blood of worthy ancestry, for Holy Church's goods must be expended on Holy Church's blood as it's descended. Therefore he'd honor thus his holy blood, though Holy Church itself became his food. Large tolls this miller took beyond a doubt, with wheat and malt from all the lands about, of which I'd specify among them all a Cambridge college known as Solar Hall. He ground their wheat and all their malt he ground, and on a day it happened as they found. The manciple got such a malady that all men surely thought that he should die. Whereon this miller stole both flour and wheat 100-fold more than he used to cheat. For theretofore he stole but cautiously, but now he was a thief outrageously, at which the warden scolded and raised hell. The miller snapped his fingers, truth to tell, and cracked his brags and swore it wasn't so. There were 2 poor young clerks, whose names I know, that dwelt within this hall whereof I say, wilful they were and lusty full of play, and all for mirth and to make revelry. After the warden eagerly did they cry, to give them leave, at least for this one round, to go to miller and see their produce ground. And stoutly they proclaimed they'd bet their neck the miller should not steal 1/2 a peck of grain by trick, nor yet by force should thieve. And at the last the warden gave them leave. John was the one, and Elaine was that other. In one town were they born, and that called Strother, far in the north, I cannot tell you where. This Elaine, he made ready all his gear, and on a horse loaded his sack anon. Forth went Elaine the clerk, and also John, with good sword and with buckler at their side. John knew the way and didn't need a guide. And at the mill he dropped the sack of grain. Ah, Simon Hale, good morn, first spoke Elaine. How fares it with your fair daughter and wife? Elaine, welcome, said Simpkin, by my life, and John also, how now? What do you here? Simon, said John, by God, need makes no peer. He must himself serve, who's no servant, or else he's but a fool, as all clerks say. Our manciple, I hope he'll soon be dead. So aching are the grinders in his head, and therefore am I come here with Elaine, to grind our corn and carry it home again. I pray you speed us thither as you may. It shall be done, said Simpkin, by my fay. What will you do the while it is in hand? By God, right by the hopper will I stand, said John, and see just how the corn goes in. I never have seen, by my father's kin, just how the hopper waggles to and fro. Elaine replied, well, John, and will you so? Then will I get beneath it by my crown to see there how the meal comes sifting down into the trough, and that shall be my sport. For John and Faith, I must be of your sort. I am as bad a miller as you be. The miller smiled at this, their delicacy, and thought, all this is done but for a while. They think there is no man may them beguile. But by my thrift I will yet blear their eyes, for all the tricks in their philosophies. The more odd tricks and stratagems they make, the more I'll steal when I begin to take. In place of flour I'll give them only bran. The greatest clerk is not the wisest man. As once unto the grey wolf said the mayor, by all their arts I rate them not a tear. Out of the door he went then secretly. When he had seen his chance and quietly, he looked up and down until he found the clerk's horse where it stood securely bound, behind the mill under an arbor green, and to the horse he went then, all unseen. He took the bridle off him, and anon, When the said horse was free, why he was gone toward the fen, for wild mares ran therein, and with a neigh he went through thick and thin. This miller straight went back, and no word said, but did his business with these clerks paid, until their corn was fairly fully ground. But when the flour was sacked and the ears bound, this John went out to find his horse away, and so he cried, "Hello!" and "Well-a-day! Our horse is lost, Elaine, for Jesus' bones. Get to your feet, come out, man, now at once. Alas, our warden's palfrey's lost and lorn." This Elaine forgot all, both flour and corn. Clean out of his mind was all his husbandry. "What? Which way did he go?" began to cry. The wife came bounding from the house, and then she said, "Alas, your horse went to the fen with the wild mares as fast as he could go. A curse light on the hand that tied him so, and him that better should have knotted rein." "Alas," quoth John, "Elaine, for Jesus' pain, lay off your sword, and I will mine also. I am as fleet, God knows, as is a roe. By God's heart, he shall not escape us both. Why didn't you put him in the barn, my oath? Bad luck, by God, Elaine, you are a fool." These foolish clerks began to run and roll toward the marshes, both Elaine and John, and when the miller saw that they were gone, he half a bushel of their flour did take, and bade his wife go knead it and make bread make. He said, "I think those clerks some trickery feared, yet can a miller match a clerkling's beard? For all his learning, let them go their way. Look where they go, yea, let the children play. They'll catch him not so readily, by my crown." The simple clerks went running up and down, with "Look out! Halt! Halt! Down here! Where the rear? Go whistle you, and I will watch him here." But briefly, till it came to utter night, they could not, though they put forth all their might, that stallion catch. He always ran so fast, till in a ditch they trapped him at the last. Weary and wet, as beast is in the rain, came foolish John, and with him came Elaine. "Alas," said John, "the day that I was born. Now we are bound toward mockery and scorn. Our corn is stolen, folk will call us fools, the warden and the fellows at the schools, and especially this miller. Well-a-day." Thus John complained as he went on his way toward the mill, with Bayard once more bound. The miller sitting by the fire he found, for it was night, and farther they could they not. But for the love of God they him besought, for shelter and for supper for their penny. The miller said to them, "If there be any, such as it is, why ye shall have your part. My house is small, but you have learned your art. You can by metaphysics make a place a full mile wide and 20 feet of space. Let us see now if this place will suffice, or make more room with speech by some device." "Now, Simon," said John, "by St. Cuthbert's beard, you're always merry and have well answered. As I've heard, man shall take one of two things, such as he finds, or take such as he brings. But especially, I pray you, mine host dear, give us some meat and drink and some good cheer, and we will pay you truly to the full. With empty hand no man takes hawk or goal. Well, here's our silver ready to be spent." This miller to the town his daughter sent, for ale and bread, and roasted them a goose, and tied their horse that it might not go loose, and then in his own chamber made a bed, with sheets and with good blankets fairly spread. Not from his bed more than 12 feet or 10, the daughter made her lone bed near the men. In the same chamber with them by and by, it could not well be bettered, and for why. There was no larger room in all the place. They supped and talked and gained some small solace, and drank strong ale that evening of the best. Then about midnight all they went to rest. Well had this miller varnished his bald head, for pale he was a drinking and not red. He hiccuped and he mumbled through his nose, as he were chilled with humours lachrymose. To bed he went, and with him went his wife, as any jay she was with laughter rife, so copiously was her gay whistle wet. The cradle near her bed's footboard was set, handy for rocking and for giving suck, and when they drunk up all there was in crock, to bed went miller's daughter, and anon to bed went Elaine, and to bed went John. There was no more, they did not need a dwale. This miller had so roundly bibbed his ale, that like a horse he snorted it in his sleep, while of his tail behind he kept no keep. His wife joined in his chorus, and so strong, men might have heard her snores a full furlong. And the girl snored as well for company. Elaine the clerk, who heard this melody, he poked at John and said, "Asleep? But how? Did you hear ever such a song ere now? Lo, what a complaint is among them all! Now may the wildfire on their bodies fall. Who ever heard so outlandish a thing? But they shall have the flower of ill ending. Through this long night there'll be for me no rest. But never mind, 'twill all be for the best. For John, said he, so may I ever thrive, as if I can that very wench I'll swive. Some recompense the law allows to us. For John there is a statute which says thus, that if a man in one point be aggrieved, yet in another shall he be relieved. Our corn is stolen, to that there is no nay, and we have had an evil time this day. But since I may not have a mending now, against my loss I'll set some fun and how. By God's great soul, it shan't be otherwise. This John replied, Elaine, let me advise. The miller is a dangerous man, he said, and if he be awakened, I'm afraid he may well do us both an injury. But Elaine said, I count him not a fly, and up he rose, and to the girl he crept. This wench lay on her back and soundly slept, until he'd come so near, ere she might spy. It was too late to struggle then or cry. And to be brief, these two were soon at one. Now play, Elaine, for I will speak of John. This John lay still a quarter hour or so, pitied himself, and wept for all his woe. Alas, said he, this is a wicked jape. Now may I say that I am but an ape. Yet has my friend there something for his harm. He has the miller's daughter on his arm. He ventured, and his pains are now all fled, while I lie like a sack of chaff in bed. And when this jape is told another day, I shall be held an ass, a milksop, yea. I will arise and chance it by my fay. Unhardy is unhappy, as they say. And up he rose, and softly then he went to find the cradle for expedient, and bore it over to his own footboard. Soon after this the wife no longer snored, but woke and rose and went outside to piss, and came again and did the cradle miss, and groped round here and there, but found it not. Alas, thought she, my way I have forgot. I nearly found myself in the clerk's bed. Ebb and site, but that were wrong, she said, and on until by cradle she did stand, and groping a bit further with her hand, she found the bed, and thought of naught but good, because her baby's cradle by it stood, and knew not where she was, for it was dark, but calmly then she crept in by the clerk, and lay right still, and would have gone to sleep, but presently this John the clerk did leap, and over on this goodwife did he lie. No such gay time she'd known in years gone by. He pricked her hard and deep like one gone mad, and to a jolly life these two clerks had, till the third cock began to crow and sing. Elaine grew weary in the grey dawning, for he had laboured hard through all the night, and said, Farewell now, maudie sweet delight. The day is come, I may no longer bide, but evermore, whether I walk or ride, I am your own clerk, so may I have weal. Now, sweetheart, said she, go and fare you well, but ere you go, there's one thing I must tell. When you go walking homeward past the mill, right at the entrance, just the door behind, you shall a loaf of half a bushel find, that was baked up of your own flour, a deal of which I helped my father for to steal, and darling may go save you now and keep. And with that word she almost had to weep. Elaine arose and thought, ere it be dawn, I will go creeping softly by friend John, and found the cradle with his hand anon. By God, thought he, all wrong I must have gone. My head is dizzy from my work tonight, and that's why I failed to go aright. I know well by this cradle I am wrong, for here the miller and his wife belong. And on he went, and on the devil's way, unto the bed wherein the miller lay. He thought to have crept in by comrade John, so to the miller in he got anon, and caught him round the neck, and softly spake, saying, You, John, you old swine's head, awake, for Christ's own soul, and hear a noble work. For by St. James, and as I am a clerk, I have 3 times in this short night no lack swived that old miller's daughter on her back, while you, like any coward, were aghast. You scoundrel, cried the miller, you trespassed? Ah, traitor, false and treacherous clerk, cried he, you shall be killed by God's own dignity. Who dares be bold enough to bring such shame, my daughter who is born of such a name? And by the gullet then he caught Elaine, and pitilessly he handled him amain. And on the nose he smote him with his fist, down ran the bloody stream upon his breast, and on the floor, with nose and mouth a-soak, they wallowed as 2 pigs do in a poke. And up they came, and down they both went, prone, until the miller stumbled on a stone, and reeled and fell down backwards on his wife, who nothing knew of all this silly strife. for she had fallen into slumber tight with John the clerk, who had been awake all night. But at the fall from sleep she started out. "Help, Holy Cross of Bromholm," did she shout. "In Manaus tuus, Lord, to thee I call. Simon, awake, the fiend is on us all. My heart is broken, help, I am but dead. There lies one on my womb, one on my head. Help, Simpkin, for these treacherous clerks to fight." John started up as fast as well he might, and searched along the wall and to and fro to find a staff, and she arose also. And knowing the room better than John did, she found a staff against the wall anon, and then she saw a little ray of light, for through a hole the moon was shining bright, and by that light she saw the struggling two, but certainly she knew not who was who, except she saw a white thing with her eye, and when she did this same white thing espy, she thought the clerk had worn a nightcap here, and with the staff she nearer drew and near, and thinking to hit Elaine on his pole, she fetched the miller on his bald white skull, and down he went crying out, "Help, help, I die." The two clerks beat him well and let him lie, and clothed themselves and took their horse anon, and got their flour, and on their way were gone. And at the mill they found the well-made cake, which of their mill the miller's wife did bake. Thus is the haughty miller soundly beat, and thus has lost his pay for grinding wheat, and paid for the 2 suppers, let me tell, of Elaine and of John, who have tricked him well. His wife has taken also his daughter sweet. Thus it befalls a miller who's a cheat, and therefore in this proverb said with truth, an evil end to evil man forsooth. The cheater shall himself well cheated be, and God who sits on high in majesty, save all this company, both strong and frail. Thus have I paid this miller with my tale. Here ends the Reeve's tale.